make sure that I cover the core material so that no one gets left behind in understanding the fraud, how it's perpetuated, and then how to deal with it. So the first thing is, who's heard of the unum sanctum?
Yep, heard of it.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Okay, better. Who's not heard of it? Okay, that's the most important document you need to know about. So what's the unum sanctum? The unum sanctum is a papal bull.
How do you spell it?
U-N-A-M. New word, S-A-N-C-T-U-M, sanctum. Unum sanctum. It's a papal bull that was introduced by Pope Boniface, 1302, in response to the Magna Carta. Now, how many of you think the Magna Carta is, yes, really important for us to do? How many of you have even heard of the Magna Carta? Yeah. The Magna Carta actually has no place in this whatsoever. It's got no standing. I don't need to go into it. I will go later. It's on all of my other videos if you want to find out more about why it has no standing on Australian soil. But the unum sanctum is, because this is what it says. This was the Pope saying, I claim every soul on the planet for the Catholic Church.
Wow. Wow.
Okay, every soul on the planet for the Catholic Church. How many of you are familiar with maxims of law? A maxim of law? No? A maxim of law is something that becomes a foundation for all law, and it's not challengeable. That's it. And here's one of them. He who does not deny admits.
If you don't protest.
If you deny. If you don't say no, if you say, for instance, if I say, you're an idiot, if you don't say no, I'm not, you have accepted it, that you're an idiot.
Condemnation.
Yeah? So, if you have not denied the unum sanctum, the Vatican owns your soul. How does that sit with you? Not good? Alright, so we need to deny it. We can't just say it. Why can't we just say it? Because their whole realm exists on paper. Okay? Theirs is a paper realm. It's a realm of fiction. And we are the living. So we must put into their system a rebuttal of the unum sanctum. So we've got to put a document in. So the best document to put into their system is the most powerful document in their system. Because their system is a system of commerce and trade. And the most powerful document in commerce and trade is the affidavit. In particular, the unchallenged affidavit. So how does an affidavit work? An affidavit works is I make a whole lot of statements, and then I give them to you to say, you challenge whatever you want to challenge with proof that it's not true, and everything that's left becomes the contract between you and I. That's how an unchallenged affidavit works. So we need to put an affidavit into their system because you don't exist in their system. The only thing that exists in their system is what?
Everyone's soul.
Yes.
The straw man.
Well, what they call the straw man, which is what? Remember, it's a world of paper, the fiction. The only thing that exists in their system is the fictional person, because the living man or woman doesn't exist. You can never exist in their system as a living man or woman, ever. Only products can, only fictions can. I say, well, wait a minute, how do they control us? Quite simply because they create a fiction in their system. And your affidavit is to say, I'm not the fiction that you have created, that you are controlling. Does that all make sense? Any questions about that so far? Because now, how do they create the fiction? How many people have heard of the birth certificate? How many of you have heard that it's illegal, illegitimate, fraudulent? Yeah. It's not. It's absolutely perfectly legal and legitimate. Does that surprise you? Because we've been told it's legal. And I'm going to explain to you how it's legal and how they commit the fraud. It's really simple, but they're very clever. When the baby's in the womb, you've got the baby, the umbilical cord. Oh, look like I'm having a baby. Bloody hell. No, put it out. I'm back, pregnant. You've got the baby, you've got the umbilical cord, and you've got the placenta. It's all the one DNA. You know when it's conceived, half from the mother, half from the father, gets conceived, cells divide, bang, bang, bang. All of it is the one DNA.
The placenta
Baby.
is the living soul.
Are you sure?
I think so.
Wow.
When they take it out and then they
You might be
utilise it.
surprised. You might be. You don't want to be yelling out and get the wrong answer, because when the right answer comes, you might think, "Oh, I shouldn't have said that."
I saw a documentary that said it, so...
Oh, if it's a documentary, it's got to be true. Anything's on television, it's got to be true. Couldn't be. Well, let's wait and see what I say,
Alright.
because I might say that, but I might say something different. We've got something that is the one DNA. It's the one property. Okay? Property. It's a property. It's been created. Whoever creates owns. That's another maxim of law. You can't deny it. If you create it, you create an artwork. Who owns the artwork?
Yourself.
You do. Whoever creates owns. So we've got bub, we've got the placenta, and then we've got the umbilical cord. And the bub is the beneficiary of everything through the placenta. Mums, yep, you get all that, don't you? It's like gets all its food and everything through the placenta, through the umbilical cord, into the bub. It's the beneficiary. Really important to know that. So, when bub is born, and I'm exaggerating words so I'm leaning on so you know the difference. When bub is born, what happens?
They cut the placenta, they cut the umbilical cord and separate the
They cut the umbilical cord. Sever it. It's actually called severance. And severance of a property creates a trust. Because, well, somebody has to own this part and somebody has to own this part because you've severed the property. How many people have got divorced? Sever the property. Someone has to own this, someone has to that, someone has to make a decision. So we've got an act here where we've severed the property and now we've got bub all on its own. What happens next to bub?
Gets registered.
No, that's way down the track.
They weigh it.
No, we're talking about bub.
It gets an injection.
They weigh it.
Yeah.
Why do they weigh it?
And take this out.
For its trust.
Do you know how much the property's worth?
Because it's worth its weight in gold. Bub is worth its weight in gold. That's why they weigh it. And when you weigh it, you have a physical record that it exists. What else do they do to bub?
Measure it.
They register it on Mum's boob.
Give it a needle.
Take blood out of the foot.
Oh, yeah.
No, they don't take a footprint. Wait for it. They take a print of the soul. Because they play with words. See, if I say the word soul, which word am I talking about?
The heart.
Am I? How do you know? No, I'm talking about the soul, not the soul.
On the sole of your foot. Yeah.
S-O-L-E.
The soul of
Yeah.
feet.
They play with words. It sounds the same. They take an impression of the soul to keep it, just in case something happens. But what happens next? Here's Mum. She's got the bub, and she goes, "Oh, this is my beautiful baby girl, whom I'm going to call
Jane.
Mary Jane." She names it. Does she just go, "No, I'm not going to name it"? She's been thinking up names for months. And in this moment she says, "This is my new baby, Mary Jane." Now what happens when she names it? This is very important. Who's read the Bible? Okay. Because I'm quizzing you because you're the experts now.
I'm not an expert. I'm not an
Adam
expert.
was given dominion over every living thing on the planet by doing what?
Naming.
By naming them. Adam was given dominion over them by naming them. So when Mum names baby, she gets dominion over baby. Which means she owns it, she controls it. They can't be changed.
So with this voice thing now, they're renaming lots of places, like they're giving Brisbane an Aboriginal name, blah blah blah. Does that mean they're giving the title back to the Aboriginals?
No.
This is why they want the voice thing?
No.
Is that part of it
Yeah.
too?
No.
One subject at a
Because they're
time.
changing the name.
Yeah, one
Good
subject.
point. One subject at a time.
Yeah.
If you got a question that's a bit skew with,
I just thought with the
On the-
name thing, it
on the-
meant they were
on the
changing the
fifth.
title.
I'm the fifth in my generation of Charles Henry Norval, the fifth.
round of applause. Charles will be wrong with it. Thank you.
My mother didn't name it. It was part of a heritage.
Somebody still had to acknowledge and accept that. So your mother still had to me to Charles Henry, etc. the fifth, right? To claim it.
Well, I'd say my father might have had something to say.
Well, he might have had something to say about it as well. But let's not get distracted with finer points, because we have to understand the fundamentals for everyone first. Okay, I'm interested in those things. They're sort of little ditty, but if we get sidetracked,
Yeah.
we're going to be here all night.
Yeah.
All right, Bub's taken care of. What's next, ladies?
Way the placenta.
Yeah, the way that the sound.
Listen, they birth the placenta, don't they?
From the birth canal.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it comes out second.
Okay. Does
Not
it
many
matter if
people
it's
get
through
to
the
see
birth
that
canal
part.
or cesarean or whatever?
It's going to come out.
Okay, it's birthed. What was the baby?
Born.
No, the baby was born.
Yeah.
The placenta is birthed.
Yeah, like a ship.
Ah.
Huh? Through the, and they say through the birth canal. So what are they doing? They're already dragging the placenta into Admiralty maritime jurisdiction. But it's not there yet.
Wow.
They're just using the terminology. Now what happens to the placenta?
It's way.
Anyway.
Why do they weigh it?
Worth
To see what it's worth.
Gold.
Oh, because it's worth its weight in gold.
And it's supposed to be 1/6 of the child's weight.
It's not. I mean, I always thought the placenta was the same.
No,
Or
it's
if not more.
1/6 of the weight of the baby usually.
1/6 the weight of the
And they check
baby.
it to make sure all the lobes are there.
They're huge
Well, that's what
sometimes.
they're telling
And
you.
They're
there's
huge.
little large
Placentas are huge.
From my experience, they're almost the same weight.
Inside the part.
So let's do an exercise here. Let's say that the placenta is the same size as the baby, which in my recognition it could, but let's just do it for an example. No, let's do it the other way. Let's say it's half the weight. But let's say Bub was a big baby. Let's say it's a 10-pound baby.
Oh gosh. It's so sad.
That'd be one heavy placenta.
I was nearly 10-pound.
I don't
So
know.
I'm okay with that. Let's say Bub's 10-pound. How many ounces is that? 10 times 16 is 160.
60, yeah.
Okay, and how much is gold? It's about $3,000 an ounce. So what's 160 times 3,000? 4.8 million.
Wow.
So the placenta is worth $4.8 million.
That's if it's that big. No one's ever that big though.
Well,
It's always 1/6 anyway. Anyway,
They're distracted by numbers.
that's okay.
4.8 million. They weigh it. It's worth. Now then, what happens to the placenta?
Well, they reckon they garbage it, but
They use it
You're on
for
the right
cell,
track.
for cell research.
Yeah, you're on the
stem
right
cells.
track.
They do stem
How can they
cells
do
out of
that?
it.
How can they do that?
I don't know.
Because the mother abandons it. She doesn't want it. It's abandoned. It's abandoned at sea.
And it should
Maybe they
stay
said
with
And if it's abandoned at sea, someone can claim it, and the word they use is salvage.
Salvage.
So they salvage the placenta. They now own it because it's been abandoned.
who's they?
The state, ultimately the Vatican.
And why do they want to own that?
Why do they want to own it? How much is it worth?
It's worth money.
Yeah, but to whom, you know?
because it has a lot of spirit. It has a lot of
Because who
spirit.
it
Good
came
question.
from is going to
We've answered the question. The Vatican do. The state do. Why? That's another question, which we're going to get to.
So it doesn't, if the Vatican claims it, someone else has got to do it on the Vatican's behalf.
No, it's hot.
They're all acting on the Vatican's behalf. Whoever salvages, corporation, hospital, all these entities are owned by the Vatican.
No. Can anyone see it?
Oh,
Can anyone find
that's-
it?
It's in that box.
Stop now.
Every corporation, all of them, hospitals, governments, all this, all roads lead to where?
Rome.
To the Vatican.
I know.
Isn't it? When it unfolds, you go, oh my God, how can we not know that? So, here's Bub. They claim it. What do they do next? Oh, sorry, here's the placenta. What do they do with the placenta?
So they salvage it, right?
Yeah, they've salvaged it. They now own it. What did Mum do to Bub?
Named it.
Named it.
Oh, yeah, right.
So Mum names it Mary Jane.
Yes.
The state names the placenta Mary Jane Smith. They put a surname on. And where do they get it? They look for the father and they look for the mother. Say, we'll use this name, we'll tack it on. Surnames are actually not legal. They're not legal. So and what does surname mean? In ancient Latin, it means sur, means on, name. It's a name that's put on. And they put it on so that they can own it. Because if you name something, you have dominion and ownership over it. And so they create a birth certificate because the placenta was birthed. Not a born certificate, not a born record, a birth certificate. Now, you think, but doesn't mean the same thing. Go into their legislation, any of it that says this definition of birth includes stillbirth. Now remember those maxims we talked about? We think, well, that means that every baby that's born, but it also includes all of the stillbirths as well. There's a little maxim that says inclusio unius est alterius exclusio, which of course everybody knows.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Oh, do I need to translate it? Oh. It means this. Only what is said after the word including is included, everything else is excluded. Birth includes stillbirth means this. Birth only includes stillbirth. Birth only includes, because the word including means that it only includes everything that's listed after that and excludes everything else. Birth includes stillbirth means birth only includes stillbirth, it excludes live born. So birth only relates to
The
the placenta.
Mm.
So if you get a birth certificate, who's the birth certificate for?
The placenta.
The placenta. And in the top left-hand corner, has anyone got one? I had one in my bag here, but it doesn't matter.
So we should have a picture of a placenta on our driver's license.
Absolutely, you could do that. What does it say in the top left?
That's
I'm
a
going to
good
spell it
idea.
out for you. It was in capital letters, which is not English, you can't read it, but C-H-I-L-D. What does that say?
Child.
Yeah, that's what we think it does.
That's what's printed.
Yeah, but in ancient Latin, CH is pronounced K.
Killed.
Killed. Oh, right.
Killed.
Pair, went.
So that's called a misnomer, and they do it to trick you. Does a dead entity have any rights?
Nope.
None whatsoever. So you say, how can they do this to us? How can they do this? They can't do it to you, the living man or woman, but they can do it to the fiction. And if you have a driver license, you put it over, what are you telling them?
You're a
You're
fiction.
accepting you're the
You're
fiction.
I'm the fiction. I'm dead. I've got no rights. Now here's the next thing they do. Because that they know it's worth something, it's a product. What do they have to do products around the world?
Trademarks.
Trademarks? No. What else do they have?
Sell and buy and sell.
Through the
Market?
what market?
Stock.
Stock market. So your little placenta here that's worth, what do we say? $4.2 million is put on the stock market, and they create a series of bonds from it when you're born. And here's, they make 3 jurisdictions that they can sell everything in. Land, for if the product's on land. air, for if the product's in the air, and water, for if the product's in water.
Oh, law. No.
Voila! You take the first letters of those, L-A-W.
Law.
Law. And they put that in there because it sounds just like what we, the living men and women, call L-O-R-E,
Yeah.
which is spoken storytelling. That's how we have all of our stuff through law. So they create this little misnomer, and that's where the 3 jurisdictions come in. And they spell the name differently for each jurisdiction. In lowercase, Mary Jane Smith. If the surname's there, it's the fiction. Doesn't matter if it's capital or not. If the surname's there, that's the fiction. There's a thing called Capitis Dominius Maximus, which is where there's levels at which they strip all your rights away. So if they only capitalise the surname, they've only taken some parts away. That relates to one trust. If they capitalise more of it, they've taken more of your rights away. That's one of the other trusts. If they capitalise all of it, they've taken all of your rights away of the placenta. And they use the 3. The lowercase version of the name. Then they have the fully uppercase capital, Mary Jane Smith in capitals. And this one, Smith, comma, Mary Jane. Now you might get a speeding fine or something like that, and when you actually look at all the paperwork, it's got 2 of them. It's got the lowercase name and it's got this, or it's got Mr. or Ms. Mr. or Ms. is bringing you under the Admiralty law, under the water, because that's the lowest rank in the military. Where you have to follow orders, you can't question anything. So if you've been given something by the police, which is in dog Latin, and does everyone know what dog Latin is?
Yeah.
Anyone not what? Dog Latin is what looks like English, but it's in capital letters.
Yeah.
So if I put something at the top of the piece of paper as a title, like notice, but it's in capital letters, that's not English. I can't read that. It's legalese. It's actually Latin. And when you put a different language onto a document, it cancels the document. You can't have 2 languages on the one document. The only way you can do it is if you put quote marks around it. Okay, because that protects it. The rest of the document must always be in one language and one language only. So if you get a document, you can go through with your red pen and you can mark it. Do not understand, 2 languages, blah, 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 and send it back to them saying this document's not understood. There's lots of ways you can deal with all of this. So we've got Bub, we've got the baby, we've got the tray. Now the other thing that's on, how many of you got a copy of your birth certificate? How many pages?
One, yeah.
Oh, really? Mine's got...
On the other side, it's got a stamp and everything.
On the other side,
Page, yeah.
it's got something. Or did they just send you 1 page?
1 page.
Oh, they didn't send you the other page.
No.
You need to ask for the other page. Do you remember what else is on the other page? And when I find my documents, I'll show you this later.
A number, receipt number.
Joyce has got.
They've got
give you one.
the address that they send it to you, and they fold it up. Then it's got some notice about, you know, birth certificates. And then at the bottom, it has... Joyce has got one?
Yeah.
I've got a few and they're different.
Okay. Talk among yourself.
No, page 2.
Yeah,
Here's one we prepared
the old birth certificates are like a Romeo copy, and it only actually had 1 side, but down below it had the person, the registry.
They only gave you 1 side.
But I think with Romeo they could only do 1
Right,
side.
Alex, there's a bit of a handful for you.
Let me have a look.
Referred to the long form and short form.
Let me see if I can find one that goes here. So this is says certified copy of an entry of birth. So who does that relate to? Placenta. So that's no good.
And you're certified. Congratulations.
Register of birth. Only 1 side. Birth in the state of Western Australia. This isn't you. This is the placenta. Why are they registering it? Because it's worth $4.2 million and it's in their system. You're not in their system.
Who is that worth 4 point? whatever, a million.
The Vatican.
To the owner.
It should be
The
you.
bond.
Who owns it?
Who's going to buy that?
They put it on the stock market and they trade it.
That's the value.
There's something missing. I don't understand.
Because
With all the taxes you pay when you buy all the money back.
if you put something on the stock market, it has a value. Then whatever happens to that stock increases it or decreases it. So when you go and get a job, whose name's on the employment form?
Straw man.
The placenta. And if you're making money for the placenta, you're making tax for the placenta, which goes into their coffers. And your value of your stock goes up.
And your speeding fines and all the stuff you
Yeah.
pay.
Because
Yeah,
everything's
who do you
going
think,
into there
yeah,
and they're trading and they're investing that money.
Yep.
The placenta's money is invested with the banks that they control and they use that money to do, because it's all a fraudulent system.
And also, who do you think, like the royal family and like the Rothschilds and the Medici family and all those people, where do you think they're getting their money from, Linda?
The worker bees.
Okay. When I find my folder later, I'll show you. On the back
The pink one.
of
the
this,
first one, first picture. It's got the back. Just have to flip it over.
yeah, but that's for the that's placenta.
Oh, you mean this? Oh, okay.
On the back of mine, there's 3 barcodes.
Oh my god.
Oh.
And they have all the same number but with different headers to them. Barcodes. Who knows what a barcode is?
Yeah,
So what do we think of barcodes? What I mean,
What was that, Cameron?
Go on, say
Let's-
it.
let's-
Say it. That's
a barcode.
It's a scannable identification.
If you go down to the supermarket and you buy a pint of milk, what's it got on it? A barcode. And what does the barcode do?
Identification of the tracks.
Who puts it there?
The
Why do they put it there?
yeah.
So they know.
Because it's a record of that product. If you bring up the barcode, it says 2 litres milk. So barcodes are records of tradable products. But here's the trick. Is it called a BAR lowercase code? Or is it called a capital B, capital A, capital R code?
All capitals.
It's all capitals. See, they've tricked you because they've made all these bars. Because capital B, capital A, capital R means British Accreditation Registry. Means that anything that has a barcode is recorded as a tradable product in the Crown Corporation in London, which is owned by the Vatican.
Yeah, the Vatican.
Accreditation.
Do you know that the Crown of England is owned by the Vatican?
So for how long have they owned it?
Since King John reneged on his promise to pay the money. He broke the contract in 1215 or something like that. In perpetuity forever. All heirs, all successors. So we've got
I've got to change
King
it off,
Charles
sorry.
on the supposed throne at the moment. Tell Mum I'll call her back later.
Where's his folder?
The Crown of England is owned by the Vatican because King John reneged on it. So when King Charles was coronated recently, did you notice how they did it behind closed doors, the actual coronation?
Did you
It was
see the
quite-
death in the background?
No, that's
I did.
that was just another one of the
It was an
thoughts
imperial
going
crown.
through. Yeah.
Operations.
Badger on Telstra, eh?
Guess which crown? He was supposed to be on the coronation stone.
It was an imperial
Yeah,
crown,
so
wasn't it?
it's going.
Do you know that was stolen in 1959? And the one that came back was not the same one.
Yeah, didn't the Scottish steal it?
A couple of pranksters or something
Oh,
stole it
practice.
from memory.
Yeah, and they got.
And they eventually sent something back, but it wasn't.
I know it's
The
stayed
one.
in Scotland for a long time, and they brought it back.
So
Apart
they
from
weren't
their-
coronated on that, but they put the crown on his head. Which crown?
Imperial.
He was actually crowned with the St Edward's crown, which is the Catholic crown.
Which is the one that's on the police
They've
logo.
been in cahoots for many
So he's
years.
not-
And then
Worldwide.
between that moment and when he walked out, they swapped it and they put the imperial one on his head.
Lies.
Have you ever seen pictures of William and Charles and they're in this big cloak with a big star on the front and the ostrich feather hat?
Yeah.
That's the Order of the Garter, which is the highest order of the Catholic Church.
Satanic.
Wow.
They're working for the Vatican because the Vatican controls everything until you put your affidavit in and say you no longer control my soul.
So there's no Church of England. It's owned by the Catholic Church.
It's owned by the Catholic
Are
Church.
they,
So that's why they're so similar.
are they owning the soul?
If you haven't rebutted the unum sanctum,
Tread in some dog shit before you give it back.
if you haven't rebutted the unum sanctum, not only do they own your soul, but they own your physical body and every part of it.
Well, that's crazy because they can't own our souls. It's all fictitious and on paper. It's bullshit.
They make a claim and you don't deny it. They're saying to you, I'm saying, I own you. You're saying to me, no, you don't. But the Vatican's making the claim that they own you and you're not rebutting it.
Saying anything, yeah.
Yeah, they just create a
He who does
paper
not
version.
deny accepts. That's the principle that they work on. When they send you a fine, he who does not deny accepts. All of that applies. It's commerce, trade, commerce, trade, commerce, trade.
So it's a charge.
It's all money. The terminology, charge, order. How many of you got children? No, you don't. Remember? They're fictions.
That's got a lot of
They're
children.
fictions. But you're still parents though, aren't you?
Yeah, we're renting.
No. Parent. They are your biological creations and you are their biological creator. Why? Because whoever creates owns. So have I sort of explained how the fraud happens?
Yeah.
The birth certificate is 100% legal and lawful. But it doesn't apply to you. It applies to the fiction name. And then they trick you when they enroll you at school. They enroll you in the fiction name. When you go to set up a bank account, they create the fiction name. They want a copy of the birth certificate, and because you don't know, you take along the birth certificate. So you're actually opening an account for the placenta. Who's worked for more than 20 years? Okay? No, you haven't. Your placenta has got all the pay.
Right, yeah, right, physical.
You've got work, but you've got nothing for it.
no,
You
physical
thought
pain there,
it
mate.
was you. Now, here's the nice thing about this, though, is if you want to, you can actually expose this fraud and you can go back to your placenta and say, that contract was fraudulent. I want every cent that was due to me now to be paid to me. Same with the banks. Same with your housing loan. Because who owns a house out of everyone here?
No.
None of you own the house.
I do.
No, you
No,
don't.
you don't.
I
Purple
identify
Thumb
zoning.
community, I'm sorry, I purchased it for
You can't.
gold.
Sorry, who?
The land.
Yeah, who created the land?
No, she's.
It's the Aboriginal, the Purple Thumb community. I
No.
bought
Who created the land?
a creator.
God did. Have you
Yeah,
got a
God.
contract from God? Then you don't own the land. All you've bought is a claim to the land.
Did the
Okay,
government?
well,
Did the government?
That's not ownership. That's what they call a title.
Okay.
If you get a title
Their title.
to the
No, it's a
land,
better claim than what others have.
Yes.
yeah. But what you need to get from the First Nation, this is where we're heading with all of this,
Yeah.
is that they're going to supply you with a certificate of caretakership
Yeah.
of the land, which is different.
Well, that's kind of what I've got.
Yep, no, it's not what you got. There's not kinda. An elephant's kinda like a mouse because they're both grey and they're both four-legged and right. You can't purchase something that's not owned by someone. That's
Yeah.
called what's it called?
Fraud.
Purchasing stolen property, but it can't be stolen because it's not owned. And this is what we're exposing. That not only look, they have the right intention, but because they don't know the whole story, they fall over at the last leg. So if you put that in front of the other system, they're going to laugh at you.
Yeah, well, they probably have already, because I've already done that a few times.
So you're in a position where anything that is in the fiction name is a fraud that's being perpetrated against you. Only if they hold it against you, but you have to point out the difference. I am not the fiction. I am the beneficiary and executor of the fiction. Now, as the beneficiary and the executor of the fiction, you can do this. You can authorise the fiction to sell the property, no matter what jurisdiction it's in, or the claim, to your living man or woman for $1 silver. And that's a bill of sale. That's it. The living woman now owns it. You can then put that property, which the living woman owns, into your private trust. And if you want to, you can put your private trust into something like the People's Court Trust. So it's doubly protected. But if you don't transfer the ownership of it, and it's in the name of the placenta, and who owns the placenta?
The Vatican.
And then you put it in your private trust, they can get into your private trust through the back door because you're holding their property unlawfully. And they can come in and take it. Now, they don't own the land. They never claim to own the land. Say, what? Well, how can they take land tax and everything? Because you don't know the game they're playing, you pay it. Is this all feeling really good about, you're like, oh yeah, I'm really happy about all of this, about, I'm really pissed off. Okay, so we've got the title. So let me explain the title to you. Because we think, yeah, but I own the property because I've got the title. Here's Ian Botham over here. And at some point, he becomes Sir Ian Botham. Did anything about Ian Botham change?
No.
No, he just got given a piece of paper that gave him a title, Sir. And how did he get that title? Queen Elizabeth gave it to him because he declared himself subservient to her. You have a title to the land.
Wow.
It's not the land. It's not worth the paper it's written on. When you look at your title deed, who's got on their title deed lot 25 such and such? What does, and it's capital letters, L-O-T.
Location of title.
Location of title. The geographic coordinates on a map. They sold your placenta geographical coordinates on a map which has nothing to do with the land.
All two-dimensional.
What was that after?
All two-dimensional.
It's all on paper. Remember, their whole world's on paper. What state are we in at the moment?
God knows these days, love.
The state of excitement is the only state we can be in. Where does the state of New South Wales exist? On paper. What land are we on?
Terra Australis.
The land known as Terra Australis. So the only way that we can navigate our way through this system is we have to point out the frauds that are being committed and challenge every single thing they do. Say, prove it. Local council.
They wouldn't know what to say.
We love them.
Where do we start with local council? They've had 3 chances at giving them government. The people went, no.
Yeah.
So they went, we only get 3 bites of the cherry. What are we going to do? We'll go in the middle of the night and we'll register exactly the same names in capital letters as corporations, and no one will know the difference. They did it in Victoria in 1999, in Queensland in 2006, and I think in New South Wales in 2000.
You mean the councils?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
What used to be, what's the local council here?
Port Macquarie, Hastings Council.
Port Macquarie Hastings Council, in lowercase letters, was the old council that was run by people of the community in lowercase letters. Governments had nothing to do with it, and the people looked after the people.
Yeah, correct.
And they elected representatives and they managed all of the fields and all of that. And then in the middle of the night, they went in and they registered in capital letters Port Macquarie Hastings Council. And they changed all the headings. They said, we're just upgrading our headings and we're doing all this. And no one noticed the difference. It was a corporate takeover. And ever since then, the government, i.e. the Vatican, has been calling the shots.
Yep.
And they keep the facade.
What date was that?
In New South Wales, I'm guessing it was 2012. I can't remember. I know Queensland was 2006. And Victoria in particular was November the 3rd, 1999.
So most of the people here are in Hastings Peoples Council.
Well, there's a private corporation which is a money-making venture. They keep the facade of electing councillors. So you think, we're going to elect councillors who are going to stand up for us. And most of them, have you noticed, are property developers? People who are financially funded because they're getting kickbacks to do the work.
Yeah.
We all know that, but now it's all starting to make sense what's happening, isn't it?
Yeah.
But she used to also have meetings where we went and we could have our say, and we could, if there was more of us, then the council would listen and they would actually do something about what we. But now it's the CEO.
Behind the closed door, now they're going, you fools, come to a council meeting and give us your opinions. And the councillors, if they all, let's say there's 12 councillors, and they all vote for A, and the CEO says, no, we're doing B, guess what happens?
The CEO gets the vote.
B, C, D, E, and everything else. You're all screwed.
What they do, they say, you can have your say, and that's actually what government does. You can have your say, but you can't implement that say.
No.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you'll be heard.
See, what they're saying is...
You can talk as much as you want.
Yeah, you can talk as well. You can have your say. You've got a right to say whatever you want. Go for it. You're wasting your time.
People are thinking, oh, well, that means it must mean something. It doesn't mean anything.
Doesn't mean
They
anything.
don't even let you have your say.
It's a facade.
If you say anything, you're thrown out.
Because they can, because it's a private meeting. They've been nice enough. But if they say something that you don't want to hear, it's going to waste their time or everything, just chuck them out.
That's what they do.
And people say, you can't do that. Oh, yes, we can. You're in our private meeting. We can do whatever we want. So how are you going to deal with the local council?
Send them.
Get a gun.
You don't fight their system. Okay? You are under martial law. Did you know that?
Pretty much.
Martial law. How many of you have looked up the rules of war? Geneva Convention. Because you've got to operate under the Geneva Convention. If you go out and you protest anything against them, what are you? You're a combatant. And in war, what are they entitled to do?
They can
Shoot you. You remember down in Victoria, they shot everyone with rubber bullets and everyone, that's terrible stuff. They're totally entitled to because those people went out and protested.
Yeah, but it works both ways. They're the enemy too.
We just need
We don't
to...
have
If we consider the enemy, well, they're the enemy as well.
Under the rules of war, if you declare yourself the enemy, they can do all sorts of stuff to you. If you say, I'm non-combatant,
White flag.
anything they do to you is a war crime. But the minute you say, well, and bang, you justify anything that they do. Courts don't apply in this land. There's not one single court that has any authority. It's a facade just like the council. They make it look like nothing has changed. That's why magistrates do whatever they want. And the minute you get up in the court and you say, I'm the living man, do they recognise the living man? No. And you say, you can't do this? They've challenged the... What are they doing? They're being combatant? Throw them out.
Aren't they being combatant by being a belligerent government? And
they're an invading force. They're not a government. We have to get this out of our head that they're an elected government. They're an invading force. They happen to be a corporation, but they come under the rules of war. They can't touch non-combatants. They have to leave you alone. So you never fight them. You use the system against them. So when it comes to councils, here's what you do. And this is all going to change when the First Nations take over. But for now, to protect yourselves. You go to ASIC online, and for $42, You get together and you say, we're going to register the alternate bullshit Shire Council. That's my term for it, because they're the bullshit Shire Council. We're going to be the alternate bullshit Shire Council. And you go, what does that do? Ah, see, at the moment, they're the only show in town. They're the only business offering what they offer. The minute you set up the alternate bullshit Shire Council, and you might call it the
Hastings
Peoples Council.
Corey Voice Council.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it. Now the people have got a choice. I don't want to get my phone through Telstra. I want to get my phone through Optus because they've got a better deal. And the alternate bullshit Shire Council, they only offer rates at $200 a year, not at $2,000 a year. So when the government council sends you a rate notice, which is an offer, it's not a bill, it's an offer, and you say to them, thank you very much for your kind and generous offer, and it's been interesting being your customer for the last 15 years. However, I now do business with the alternate bullshit Shire Council who have offered me the deal for $200 a year. However, if you're prepared to match their offer, I'll continue with you. Business, trade, simple. The council cannot take any action against you because of a simple thing called the Monopolies Act. There cannot be a monopoly in business.
That's right.
So, you're giving us the information about how to deal with this situation, but if we actually did that and we sent this letter to Port Macquarie Council, how would that work?
You send it with a notice of legal liability and a notice of conditional acceptance, which means that you've told them as a business, I don't want to do business with you, but if you keep harassing me, you are going to have to pay me $10,000 per page for me to process after I've told you, because it's harassment.
Do they have people in their offices who understand this? Like,
I don't care if they do or they don't.
Yeah, I doubt
how
it.
it will work. This is the real law.
We are talking about using their system against them, and at the end of the day, this is what they'll do. They'll ignore it. They'll ignore it. They'll say, you've got to pay, you've got to pay, and then we're going to take you to court. So, oh, thank you very much. That saves me filing, because I'm going to now file a counterclaim of fraud.
And they pay the bills.
Wow.
They said thank you as well.
Yeah. And when you claim fraud, it's a serious criminal indictable offence. It can no longer be heard by a magistrate. He doesn't have the jurisdiction. It must be lifted up to a jury, and a jury have to make the decision. They have to make the decision on the fraud before whether you have to pay the rates notice comes in. But that's just one way you can play the game. Another way you can play the game, when you get the rates notice, is you can go, that's funny. Remember in the old days when we used to have a cheque and we'd cross it not negotiable? Well, they've given you a negotiable instrument because it doesn't have not negotiable on it. So you write, thank you for sending this negotiable instrument. My offer to you, the name da-da-da-da-da, is that you pay me $200,000 not negotiable. Send it back to them.
You've got to know how to play the game.
Yeah.
It's not, don't just have a backhand. I don't have a backhand because I just went forehand. Don't just have a forehand, have a backhand, have a smash, have a lob.
Would you write that in small letters or what?
Everything in lowercase letters. You do not write anything in capital letters, because the minute you write anything in dog Latin on your document or their document or whatever, you have made the document criminal and counterfeit.
Wow. Because it's two languages on the one form.
Yes.
So no capital words.
No.
No, we're actually part of a collective, the Hastings Peoples Council. Okay, so that's a start, but we've got to get more understanding of its legal identity. That's the issue.
No, you register.
Is it registered with ASIC?
No,
Not yet. Not yet.
We have to
So it's just an informal name.
Yeah.
We need to register
Okay.
it.
Here's the great thing. You go into ASIC, put it in, $22. It now has full legal standing of every other corporation.
Wow.
I think we'd have to vote it in. you know,
You-
amongst,
I don't
have
think
to.
you get a
no,
no
no,
vote.
I meant amongst our members.
Yeah, but amongst your members, you can vote it in if you want,
Yeah.
or one of you can say, look, I'm just going to register it. The fact that it exists now, everyone can say, no, I do my stuff for the Hastings.
Fair
Okay.
enough, okay.
It doesn't matter
Council.
who registers or if you have to vote it or whatever.
Yeah.
What it does is it gives you an ace in the game.
It gives
Why
us
wouldn't you?
a tool to use against those
Absolutely.
people. We can spread it to others and pass that on.
See, what I'm doing
Oh, great,
is
yeah.
I'm taking their ammunition.
Yeah.
I'm loading it in their guns, and I'm turning it around and say, pull the trigger whenever you want.
When we register it, do we just need an ABN or do we have to register it as
Well,
a
you're
company?
given an ABN.
You get an ABN when you're registered as a business name.
Yeah,
You're
but I'm
registering it
asking,
all
does it have
lowercase.
to be registered as a company or
No.
is it like a sole trader?
It's a
type
business.
ABN?
It's just a business, but it has its own legal identity.
Yeah, I
It doesn't matter who owns it. If it's 2 people, if it's 3
I'm
people, a
just
sole
asking
trader.
about the structure because you know you register
No,
as a
just a
partnership, a
business
sole
name.
trader,
Just the
or
same as another
It doesn't matter.
I actually
No
tried to
case.
register 2
Sorry.
weeks ago. Just
It
for
doesn't
fun.
matter what the structure is.
Okay, so anything.
You can just have it sitting on the fridge. The fact that it exists is all that matters. It doesn't have to even be operational
But
So it can just be
when
like
you
a shell
register-
company, just sitting there to register the name.
if you want.
Will they register in lowercase?
Then you can open something
No.
else, tries it
No.
then-
They might.
You know.
So
doesn't matter.
It'll come in their language, will it? Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Does it matter if it's in uppercase or lowercase?
No,
Because it's
you're
in their
world.
system.
Yeah.
You're only using it
That's right.
because of the Monopolies Act.
So you can play in their game.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's one of it. That's a question on.
See how simple it is?
yeah. Yeah.
See, a lot of the time, this is the biggest
So you
problem
put yourself
everyone
on their
has.
dashboard, basically. Yeah.
Don't overthink this.
Yeah.
Because you've been so conditioned to think, but if I do the wrong thing, I'm going to be punished, and this is going to happen to... You start to overthink it. That's why I'm trying to explain it absolutely bare bones.
The council have a corporate plan. It's actually it's an instrument that was designated by the state government, and in that plan, they have it's more or less a shopping list of all the things they're supposed to do for the council, for the shire type of thing.
Can we have one
Now the
person?
thing is, there's a lot of things in that plan which shouldn't be in there. For instance, roads and bridges. Well, we're already paying for roads and bridges through our registration. So if we offered to the people a different plan, like you still got to have garbage collection, you've got to have, you know, for instance, you know.
You're jumping so far ahead. You're overthinking it. What I've just said is, this is your way you bankrupt them. If everybody in the community suddenly says, thank you for your offer, I'm not paying that, I'm going to the alternate bullshit side country, you're going to bankrupt them. Then you're in a position to say, well, let's take control of this back. Do you know how much of the money that you spend in rates actually goes back into the community?
None.
None of it.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
None of it.
Trafficking.
The most of it goes to the Vatican.
Wow.
Most of it goes to the Vatican, and the next highest amount, guess where that goes?
Developers.
Spain.
Spain? What's Spain got to do with it?
The rain.
What?
And it falls mainly on the flag.
Spain. Doesn't that make you go, what? What? Spain's one of the most, because Spain is very powerful in the bloodline of the gods as it comes through from Egypt and Mary Magdalene. This is why Henry VIII was married off to Catherine of Aragon. It's all about the bloodlines, and control and control and control. So the control of the Vatican originally goes back through Spain. But at the end of the day, what matters is none of the money that you give in rates actually goes into your community.
Oh, that's why the roads get done, the grass don't get cut.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Why should we spend money? Let them complain.
Oh, man.
Well, who pays for the garbage collection and that then?
You do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, with our rates though, don't we?
No.
Well, with our placenta.
Placenta's paying for it.
Yeah.
You're doing the hard work.
Yeah, the placenta's paying for it. You're paying money. You're being, I'd like to say that you're only being screwed once, but you're actually sort of being screwed numerous times every time it happens. But the solution is in your own hands. Use their system against them. Same with banks. They're part of the fraud. The same principles apply. So what I'm talking about is not some complicated thing that you have to do, because the principle applies whether it's banks, whether it's police, whether it's councils, whether it's all this. They're committing a fraud. And all you need to do is expose them. And we've got documents to help you. Notices of conditional acceptance, interlocutories. See, the whole thing's built on a three-tiered approach. Your affidavit is the most important because that's the thing that rebuts the unum sanctum, and it also goes into rebutting all of the things below them, the police, the courts, all of these things, saying you have no authority over the living man or living woman without written contract.
So who do we direct that to?
There's a list of people that you send it to. You send it to the courts, the police. You can send it to anyone you want. But you want to cover the main ones who are committing the frauds against you, which is the government, the courts, the police. They're the main ones.
What about the Vatican?
You can send a copy to the Vatican. But if you send a copy to the corporate government, guess who you've sent it to?
The Vatican.
Because we send every notice. Notice to principal is notice to agent. Notice to agent is notice to principal. So when you send it to the corporations here, they are agents of the Vatican.
Is there a website we can go to download the documents?
Yes, it's the People's Court of Terra Australis.org.
That's where we're heading in this group, my love.
And all of the documents are free. We don't sell, we're not here to make money out of helping you.
Sorry.
The People's Court aren't, I just advise them. Okay? But they're not here to make money out of you in helping you. Not the time, not the documents, not like a lot of other companies. And I've looked at a lot of these other companies, and I don't need to name them because you probably know the ones I'm talking of, and they charge you for their documents. And I've looked at the documents and I go, oh, it's got dog Latin on it. It's got, these documents aren't worth anything. They're charging people for pieces of toilet paper. And then when they don't work and they come back, you come back to them and say, well, what do I do now? There's no one to follow up. I got shown in Gympie. Someone came up to me. Who's heard of Anna von Reich? She's a so-called judge who's produced all of these documents. Number one, they're not for Australia. They're for another country. It's a whole different thing here. Number two, this portfolio of documents, I got one line in and I went, oh well, Tog Latin, the whole thing's worth nothing. And the guy who gave them to me said, but it cost me $2,000 to do all of these. And I said, well, that's an expensive roll of toilet paper. Use it well. I don't say that our documents are the best, but everyone else does. I'm always looking at ways to improve them. I'm always thinking outside the box. I discovered a way to put the jury back into the magistrate's court, which would be the local court here. And a document that all of you should get is the local court bench book.
Is anyone writing this down?
Yeah.
The local court, I think it's called the local court bench book. It's the rules all the magistrates have to follow. Do you know, I can't find the document, I've got so many documents, but I read this and I went, wow. All magistrates must be selected from a pool of justices of the peace.
Oh. Does that really happen anymore?
No. It says must be selected. It also says magistrates must not be lawyers.
That's what they say.
So you ask the magistrate, have you rebutted your oath to the bar? Because they're all trained barristers and lawyers now, because they infiltrate the system. Here's another one. Justice of the peace, if you go to definition of a court, it's got Supreme Court, Magistrates Court, da-da-da-da-da, Justice of the peace. A Justice of the peace is a court. If you have a speeding fine, you can take it to him and say, can you please dismiss this? And he can.
Oh God, you're going to be busy, Steve.
Are you a Justice of the Peace? Who's a Justice of the Peace? Did you know that you had the authority as a court?
No, nobody bothered to tell
You
me.
exude authority in peace, by the way.
There was a lady up in Queensland, she knew that. And she authorised a injunction to stop someone taking someone's property because she has the power to do that. And they took it anyway.
Oh.
So what happened? They're in fraud, contempt of court, theft, everything, because they didn't know justice of peace is a court.
And how much further did all this go?
Oh, this has all just happened in the last 2 weeks.
Wow.
So now it's all about load them up, both barrels, here we go.
I'll be interested to know what happened there.
Yeah, well, that should be watched with
Yeah, very
everything
keen.
again.
We're not being told.
You shouldn't like broadcast that one when it goes to court.
I will, don't worry.
What a precedent.
There's a lot of people who want to run people's courts. I talked about it 3 years ago. You have the power to run your own courts and jurisdiction and do all that stuff. Now I say you have no power to run your own courts. Why have I changed? Because I realised the only one who can authorise courts on this land is the First Nations tribes. Everything comes back to the First Nations tribes. And then people say, oh yeah, but what if they take all of our houses and everything and our land away? And I said, they don't want to. They want to create something extraordinarily new where every living man, irrespective of their colour, beliefs, whatever, lives in harmony. They want to say to you, we are going to give you a caretakership.
Wasn't that the idea under the 1967 referendum? That it have equality for all Australians?
Not under a government. You can't get equality under a government because all of their legislations...
Not a government, it was actually under a constitution. It was actually under the
That's under government.
Prefix con.
Exactly. People think that the Constitution is actually valid on this land.
Yeah.
No.
How many of you... we'll give it to a little one before we go. What flag do you stand under?
None.
None?
It's all division.
Well, the Union Jack in one corner anyway.
So you stand under the Union Jack?
No, well, it's a combination of the Union Jack and the Southern Cross.
I think we're under the Aboriginal flag. aren't we?
No, Aboriginal, that's copyrighted and owned by the Australian government. Eureka?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Australian flag. When we look at a document, we read from left to right and top to bottom. So everything comes under what is in the top left-hand corner. What's in the top left-hand corner of the Australian flag? The Union Jack. What is in the middle of the Union Jack covering everything else?
A cross.
What cross?
Vatican.
Well, there's the cross of St Andrews, the cross of...
No, it's called the St George Cross, but it's actually the flag of the Crown Corporation in London, which is owned by the Vatican.
Wow.
There are people out there who wave the red feather duster, you know, the merchant flag, and there's all this argument about, but this is the real flag because our grandfathers fought under this flag, and all that sort of stuff.
Red ensign.
The red ensign flag. What's in the top left-hand corner? Same thing. It's owned by the Vatican.
And there's something to do on the edges all the way right around.
Oh, the fringing, all of that stuff, that's sort of other things as well. At the end of the day, what flag do you want to stand under?
My own flag.
A freedom flag.
You are only answerable to your Creator. Therefore, as a sovereign being, has anyone not heard that term, sovereign? Okay, S-U-V apostrophe E-R-A-N. People go, well, that's like sovereign, isn't it? If I'm a sovereign, I'm a king or a queen over a group of people. If I'm sovereign, I'm in my own right king. I don't need any people under me whatsoever. I'm a sovereign being.
Which goes on your affidavit, you have your own flag.
You create your own flag.
What's your opinion of the Aboriginal flag then?
It's copyrighted. It's owned by the government.
Government owner.
We could have the Southern Cross.
You, no,
We
no,
live
you,
underneath it.
you've got to have your own flag.
You don't have to have your own flag. You can
No.
stand whatever you want,
Well,
under whatever you want.
sorry.
But I created mine, and I love the idea of the Eureka flag because that was the people standing up to the authority of the
For their
government.
rights.
So I used that as the basis of my flag, the Eureka flag. Then I stuck my own family's coat of arms in the middle, and across the top, in Latin, I wrote Fiat Justitiae Ruit Caelum. So why did you write that in Latin across? Because it means justice is in heaven, and it's my way of doing this to them.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, my,
I could have written it in English, but
Yeah.
putting it in Latin is a word. It's a message to them.
So in quotation marks, so on the two languages on the one form.
No, there's no other language on there. There's just Latin on there.
On the flag.
Yeah, on my flag.
I see it's on the flag.
Okay. Now the other thing I have, I've got my own court. Why do I have my own court?
Because you're
Would you like to
JP.
adjust to the
Yeah.
case?
No, no,
Thing.
no, no. Because I can. Because I can. I can have my own court.
Have you got your own steam?
he said,
Yeah.
put no
Do you
on
play
the door.
tennis on it?
Haven't yet, but I
He's
could if
got
I want to.
backhanded before.
And here's the great thing about my court. My court has exactly the same legal standing as the local court.
Wow.
Because it's a trading name of a private corporation. And guess what? My court has higher jurisdiction than the local court. Do you know why?
It's real.
Because the local court is a court of trade and commerce, and my court is a court of the living man and living woman. And the living always have authority over the dead.
Wow.
So what happens is if I get a piece of paper, I can put it into my court, and my court can make a ruling. And it sends a judgment back to their court dismissing the case. And the magistrate says, what's this, moot court of Terra Australis? I said, that's a superior court to this court, and it's a court of the living. I don't recognise this court. Thank you, Your Honour. Under the laws of equity, I don't have to recognise your court either.
I've seen your videos with those.
Wow.
Absolutely.
You want to see
Done
that
that
face?
personally.
Yeah.
And what they
I
do-
did it to a judge. Forget a magistrate. I did it to a judge.
What's his facial expression?
His face was like,
Yeah. Rail.
what? I said, everything you do from now on just confirms the fraud that's going on. And the next day I sent him an invoice for $3 million.
And then what happened?
Then I sent him a reminder notice when he didn't pay. And he had 14 days then to pay it.
Yes.
And then he'll get a final notice with a notice of intending action.
Yes.
And if he doesn't do that in 5 days, he then gets a commercial lien, which a judgment is made.
And bankrupt it.
It's publicised, so he as a living man has now got all this stuff against him.
By your
and,
court.
and by my court and by the People's Court. Because remember, it's their system against it. Their system says a court. It doesn't specify the court. Now remember, the court is just the space. The capital lettered local court is a private corporate fiction. Now if a private corporate fiction can do that, under the laws of the Monopolies Act, so can mine. And the sheriffs take an oath to the people, not to the private corporations. And all you have to do is remind them that if they don't uphold their oath, they're in big trouble.
So you've had a sheriff come and you've reminded the sheriff?
Sorry, I've had a...
You've had a sheriff come and you've reminded the sheriff?
Oh, no, I haven't got to that stage yet, but others have.
Is your court a corporation?
It's registered as a business, as a trading name of my proprietary limited company, which is exactly the legal status of their system. And do I have to follow the rules of their court?
No.
No. I follow the rules of my court. And they have in their paperwork this simple phrase. They must abide by the rulings of other courts. Doesn't say what courts.
Wow.
They must abide by the rulings of other courts. So when they start to do this, I say to them, Your Honour, you have no authority to override this court. The correct procedure is you must send the prosecution back to that court to appeal it in that court, which would be before a jury of 10, 12 living men and women. That's the proper procedure. You don't have the authority to squash because you must abide by my ruling. See? Use their system against them.
You play,
and have fun with it. You see, I have so much fun with it.
I know it's a worry.
You know, it is a worry. And I laugh. I was in the divorce court, right? I'm in the divorce court. And I would have signed a piece of paper straight away if she put it in front of me. But I thought this is a great opportunity to expose the fraud between a marriage and a divorce. Someone mentioned it before. I said we'll talk about it. A marriage in their legislation is between a living man and a living woman for life. There can't be conflicts in legislation. That's it. Bang. So how can people get divorced? If you go and you get married, you take a vow to each other. That's in our world. That's from our word. That's our promise. What happens after that? Where do they whisk you off to?
Registry.
Put on paper.
Got to sign the
Marriage certificate.
marriage certificate, marriage license. License is business. And what happens is you are witnessing the joinder of this placenta contract and this placenta contract, which are both of which are controlled by the state. So when a divorce is filed, a divorce is the dissolution of that merger. That's why the state creates and covers it all.
Trilogy again.
So I said, oh, I'm going to have fun with this. So I said, oh, well, no, I've got to challenge it. She said, well, I'll give you till tomorrow morning to file something. What she didn't know is I had a document pretty much already prepared. So the next morning I gave her an 80-page document. She knows she has to stand the court down because she has to read it, or she has to have been seen to have read it. She can't move from that point. She's not very happy by this stage.
This is the judge or magistrate.
This is a judge. This is now challenging the divorce.
Okay.
So she comes back and she's not very happy for some reason. And she says, this document's an absolute load of nonsense. And I said, well, that's interesting because that's 80 pages full of your legislation. That's all that's in it is your legislation. I'm just pointing out what it actually says because I'm trying to expose what a divorce actually is. And she's trapped 100%. So what happens is that the lawyer for my ex tries to bail her out and says, Your Honour, I move that the applicant be charged as a vexatious litigant. Whoa, vexatious litigant. And she says, yes, yes. What do you say to that? And I said, well, Your Honour, I'm just expressing the right that your system has accorded me to appeal. The documents that I file are in accordance with that appeal. How could I possibly be a vexatious litigant when I'm following your rules? Cornered her. So what does she say? Well, I'm ruling that the document's vexatious. And that's what I did. I just laughed. I said, so you're attributing all of these human emotions to a piece of paper. Is that correct? She said, if you use that document again in this or any, I'm going to throw it to court, condition court. And I said, that's all right. I've got what I want. So she authorises the divorce, which I have no problem with, but I got what I wanted. And the next day, I served her an invoice for $3 million. Based on her fraudulent behaviour.
Did you get the $3 million?
I'm so busy doing things that everybody else, I haven't been able to follow up on it yet, but I'm doing it.
Other people have.
You'll be able to buy it starting soon.
I've got commercial liens in place against 6 cops from 2019, and they were each charged, I think it was about $50,000 or $60,000 each. My early invoices were in alignment with my performance ones. And so I had a performance contract that said you pay me on interval on the final night, or it's 3% cumulative per day.
Wow.
So I had people running out saying, oh, we'll send you the fee tomorrow. I said, well, make sure you include the 3%. They said, what? I said, go and read the contract. They read the contract. they went out at night to ATMs getting the money to be able to pay me so they didn't have to pay the rest of it because they didn't have it on them. So those 6 are each worth over $80 billion each now because of the interest rate. People say, well, you'll never get that from them. I said, no, but I'll get their house, I'll get their car, I'll get everything they own, and I'll be garnering the wages for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Do you think they might learn the lesson?
Yeah.
There's another way of probably looking at this. When you think about a marriage is kind of a contract. And with a contract, I think there's about 6 things to a contract. One of those would be a consideration to a contract. So when you get a divorce, there is probably still part of that contract still valid. So that in essence, what you would still be required to do, both parties would be required to do, is actually care for make sure that they're cared for in some way. So there's a balance of care.
Are you talking about the verbal contract of the vows?
Yeah.
Because they're the terms of the contract.
Yeah.
And that's for a marriage. But once you sign the marriage license, that's nothing to do with the vows. That's joindering the 2 placenta trusts.
I would say that's just certifying the vows, really.
It's not.
No, it's not.
It's not. That's what people think. But that's not what it is in actuality. In actuality, that's you joindering as the executor the 2 trust accounts. That's why it's state created, state controlled, everything.
Marriages used to be written in the Bible before they were written to the state.
Marriage
All right.
used to be written in the Bible.
In your family Bible,
Yeah, absolutely.
things like people being born, any weddings, that they were all written in the back of the family Bible. That was the record.
Oh.
And then the state went in and said, no, we're going to shift it over here and we're going to trick you so that we own and control everything. All right, have a little bit of a break so that you'll get a chance to let some steam
Swallow
off.
that down.
Yeah, just digest all of that, and then maybe we'll get into some Q&A afterwards.